Greetings, folks. Heidi, hi. What a palaver. So, I've changed the numbering. So, here is the explanation as to why I've done this. I'm not trying to make your lives harder. Here we go. Slot 6. What the heck? It's not symmetrical. Please don't bail. The numbering is different because slot 7 is the fourth most valued slot out of 4. And because it is valued so little, the dichotomy of valued unvalued is less important than that of default situational. In the counter club, that is. But in the club, slots 1 and 2 are highly valued, so the dichotomy of valued unvalued is more important than the dichotomy of default situation. So here in the counter club, slot numbering is different from in the club. Now, another way I'm going to argue this is, and I'm just going to show you these new updated graphics rather. I added a little bit there, here, about modulators, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the types at the whole type level, and we can compare certain types and sort of say which type out of the pair is better at a certain function in order to sort of prove this. So if we look at SE DOMs, and I was to ask you, are they better at NI or are they better at NE? I would say they're better at NE. I mean, the ways in which SE DOMs are bad at NI, not thinking of the consequences, just living in the moments. There's not much developing going on there. And people might say, but Ben, it's a valued function. Yes, but it's 4. It's valued 4. So that is why, if we were to compare, for example, yes, ISTP and INFJ. ISTP, it's fair to say, values SE more than INFJ values SE. And so what that means is that in this club, in the club, that valued, unvalued is a more important dichotomy than default versus situational, because it's valued so much. And so, for example, and you could say here with ESFJ, but most people would say, yeah, ESFJ uses SI more than SE because it's so valued, and it has to do with the temperament. But if we were to look at ESFJ, and if you look at the actions of ESFJ, they're better at TE than TI. ESFJs can be very good in business. So, yeah. And if you look at, say, ENFJ, they're better at TE than TI on average. So let's go through all the 16. So I think that the way that SE DOMs are, the way you sort of see them, the way they act, they're not thinking of the consequences. They're just living in the here and now, living in the moment. So you'd look at them and you'd say, well, they're not doing a lot of NI, not the way that INTJs use NI. Now, NE, I think you can get SE DOMs using NE, sort of ideas in the moment, notions, putting their own spin on things. Yeah, I don't see that sort of. So I see NI as harder for the SE DOMs than NE. And the valued unvalued dichotomy is not as important because it's fourth valued. I mean, how many SE DOMs really value planning a lot into the future. No, they don't, because they're not through time, they're in time. So we've done that. Get the right colour here. So let's look at SI DOMs. NE versus NI. Are they really doing a lot of NE stuff? Like lots of different interests, lots of different switching between ideas and stuff? Not really. They're mainly staying in SI. They're mainly staying in SI. Am I live? I think I'm live. I just have no viewers. Oh, boo-hoo. So, but in what sense do SI DOMs use NI? Well, they do think about the future quite a bit. SI DOMs, and they do plan a lot. They might be quite rigid planning, but they are thinking about the future. And if we compare them with the SE DOMs, the SI DOMs are thinking about the future a lot more than the SE DOMs. So we can say that NI is stronger in the SI DOMs than in the SE DOMs. So let me just got my notes here. I'll show you what my notes are in order to go through all 16. These are my notes. Go back to there. So I had a viewer. Yes, let's look at the NE DOMs. The NE DOMs, SI versus SE. How many NE DOMs, especially ENFPs, do you see going around doing sort of physical, sporty activities or acting and dancing, or as a female ENFP traveling the world and going to countries where you might think that's a little bit dangerous for a woman, and it's like they're pretty good at those sort of like SE sort of associated activities. But if you look at the way the SE NE DOM is when it comes to SI stuff, they're barely getting by, and they see it as a chore. So I think it's fair to say that the NE DOMs are better at SE than SI. Therefore, that argues in favor of slot 6. In fact, that argues in saying SE, the contrarian alternative, should be slot 6, and this slot 7. What I should do is I should put the whiteboards up for all of the types, but I've not got that prepared. Oh dear. Maybe I could share something, although I'd have to share a PDF of it because that's where they're all together. That's not right. Oh, what? Is it got all the whiteboards in there? No, I don't want to go through them all. So what I'm going to have to do here is Model V. I've got all the profiles. Right, I'm going to have to put them all together. Right, so I'm going to put that on that other screen. Right, I'm going to, view, not continuous. Right, so I'm going to show something different. And this is going to be a case of sort of renumbering. Right, here we go. So, what's one about NE DOMs? Yeah. And it's good that they're not numbered. That's great that they're not numbered because like the numbers would have been wrong. So is that NE DOMs? So here, I'm saying that this is stronger than this. And also you can see here that it's sort of double repressed. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Because you've got E and N preferences in ENTP. And so SI is introverted and it's concrete. So it's sort of double repressed. Whereas SE is the same vertongue. And it's just opposite in one way. So this is consistent with socionics, with these two functions being the weakest in in ENTP. So I was going to look at the other one. So that's rationals, isn't it? So I need to go to idealists. There we go. And so these are the same slots because they're all going to be in the same position here in a sort of V. So again, there, ENFP better at SE than at SI. Like if you were to, most ENFPs, they're better at sort of like doing physical activities and standing up for themselves, sport, performing arts, than the SI sort of sticking to procedures and taking care of yourself with the sort of mundane activities of life better at SE. So that's what argues for that being 6 and that being 7 and that being 8. Now, but the difference is with the club is that it's not a case. Symmetrical would be okay, Ben, you're now going to number in it 1, 2, 3, 4 because you're going 5, 6, 7, 8. No. Because in the club, the valued unvalued dichotomy is more important. Meaning FI is stronger than FE in the club because FI is so much valued more than FE. But when it comes to the counter club, SI is not valued a lot more than SE. Look here, SI is the 4th valued function, 4 out of 4. Whereas here, FI is the 2nd valued function. So that's why the valued unvalued dichotomy is more important. Now let's look at the NI DOMs. So I can look here. So here we're comparing SI and SE and asking ourselves, well, what is stronger? Well, again, for NI DOMs to do SE, they're going to have to extrovert and go from abstract to concrete. They're going to have to stop doing through time, how processes change through time, and they have to go to in time, in the here and now, and they have to do in time as well, be in the present moment, not thinking about how processes, and uptime, attention directed outwards. So that's a lot. And if you look at the behavior of NI DOMs, they're not doing a lot of SE stuff. They have those IM preferences. So it's consistent with the idea that all the IN types have SE in this bottom area. So INFP and INTP will have SE here, and INFJ and INTJ will have SE there. Whereas SI, I mean, yeah, that's a way of thinking about it. If you compare INTJ and ENTP, then INTJs know how to take care of themselves better than ENTPs. I mean, who needs a comb more? Usually ENTP needs a comb more. Yeah. What else have we got? Yeah, let's look at the other NI DOM. That's going to be that one. So again, SI, SE. Also, there's that part of SI which is about sort of cautiousness, and INTJ pretty cautious and sort of planning ahead, looking how things can go wrong. Guardians might say, "Oh, I'm going to give some points for that." And with this sort of like looking ahead and careful planning, it does make the SE weaker because that's more like being in the moment and not thinking as much about the consequences, whereas INTJ is always thinking about the consequences. And so, yeah. And so you can have quite a few NI DOMs who are 6s. What am I going to look at now? So another way to compare is what else? I can look at TE DOMs, yes. So I need to go up. Well, there's the ENTJ. Let me just go up towards this one. So ESTJ with FE. I mean, the people skills are like general, sort of being part of the community. I would say that FE better than FI. It's hard to sort of rate that, because it's, unless they're sort of talking about those sort of things, like it's easier to see their FE than their FI. And because it is a guardian, it's more sort of wanting to belong and within the whatever community they're a member of. So let's look at ENTJ. Now, here's ENTJ. So, but I would say that ENTJs are frequently threes in Enneagram, and they do a lot of social networking. And so from a TE point of view, especially a TE Dom in business, they can sort of see the advantages of FE, business networking, customers always right, those sort of things. And you can see why ENTJ would be better at FE. Again, because the FI is not that valued. It's valued, but not that valued. What's more important is that this is the same verton as the lead function. Whereas this is two away. This is doubly repressed. It's feeling and it's introverted. Doubly the opposite of thinking and extroverted, or extroverting. So let's look. Well, here's another way of thinking about it. Let's go to the TI DOMs now. So that means I've got to go to Artisan. That one. And then I've got to go all the way to the bottom for INTP. But these are going to be in the same slots. So again, ISTPs with FE, all those IN types, all those IT types usually can have some shocking FE. And ISTPs and INTPs, when they're younger, they're not showing a lot of FE. So, I'm an IT type myself, like the most likely to be on the autistic spectrum, those with INT preferences. And so FE is either going to be here in the TI DOMs or here in ISTJ and INTJ. So I'm probably more interested in INTP. So, and I would say, yeah, my FI is above my FE, but I am a 6-4-1. 6-4-1. That's a lot of FI. Like 6 out of the head type is the most in touch with its feeling. 4 is FI, self-image, stuff and unique, originality, and 1, right and wrong. So it's like I call it double FI plus the 1-4-6 tri-types sextet. Double FI plus, like the 6 amps it up. Because the 5 is out of touch with its feelings, and the 7 is like just trying to look on the bright side, but the 6 is worrying. You've got that thinking feeling loop going on. What else have we got? What have I done now? 19 minutes. Another type to compare. What was I going to compare with? There was something I was going to compare in something between ESTJ and ENTP. Yeah, it's something like, obviously ESTJ is better at SI than ENTP. Or another way of putting it is, this is talking about the strength of values. ESTJ values SI more than ENTP values SI. That's the point about the valued, unvalued dichotomy being more important in the club functions. So in the case of INTP, the club is NT, which you can see there. And that is less important in the counter club. In the counter club, it's about default versus situational. And that's consistent with socionics, where these are like one-dimensional functions. And it makes sense with the dichotomies. What else was I going to compare? Oh, yeah, maybe if you compare ENTP and INTJ. Yeah. Who's better at SI? Have I got that under there? Yeah, who's better at SI? ENTP or INTJ? I would say INTJ. What else have we got here? FE. I think I've done the FE DOMs. FI DOMs. But yeah, let me go through those combinations. So if I do SE, so when I did right, so I need to compare. That's going to be INTJ versus, or let's just look at this. Let's come in the same temperament. INFJ and ENFP. Yeah, INFJ and ENFP. Who's better at SE? INFJ or ENFP? ENFP. They do a lot of extroverting sensing activities. Any votes out there for ENFP being better than INFJ at SE, even though it's valued, but it's fourth valued? Let's have a look at a different one. So now that's going to be, right, so I'm looking for inferior, and that one is contrarian alternative. So I need an example. So a type which is SI inferior, so that we're looking for an NE DOM. So let's go with the NFP again, and let's switch it. So contrarian alternative, so that's going to be INFJ again. So, and I've sort of mentioned that I think INFJ is better at SI than ENFP. Let's do another one. Let's do NE. So inferior. Who's inferior for NE? Let's say ISFJ. I'm just doing the feeling types today. Contrarian alternative of NE. So I'm sort of looking for a type that has NE there. So that would be ESFP. Right, so who's better at NE? ISFJ or ESFP? I would say ESFP. You have a lot of ESFP performers and comedians. So whereas ISFJ, I don't think they're using NE as much, even though they value it. So let's do the next one, NI. So I need a type which is NI inferior. So that means I'm looking at an NE. All I've got to do, Ben, is just switch the one above. Right, so I've just got to switch it. SEFX versus SIFX. NI. I think ISFJ uses NI better than the ESFP. ISFJs think about the future. They plan. ESFP living in the moment. Right, so next one. Let's say TE. So I need a type which is inferior for TE. So let's look at INFP versus a type which is got contrarian alternative TE. Okay, so let's look at ENFJ. Right, who's better at TE? ENFJ. ENFJ has got more energy. ENFJ can be the better TE. I can see that. So, but let's look at TI. So that means I've got to switch it around. So TI going to be inferior. So FENX versus FINX. Yeah, INFPs, you can have a lot of INFPs who are interested in philosophy, and we'll try to convince you that right, so I've got a question here from Fate. It's not quite like that in my system. is what I'm sort of doing is I noticed it on the whole type level, and then I came up with a rationalization. And then the rationalization that I came up with was that valued, unvalued is less important when it's the fourth function, because it's fourth valued. And I'm now just going through the types of the whole type level. Like ENFJs, a lot of ENFJs, they can get stuff done. They have the energy. So, but getting on to TI, I think a lot of INFPs are better at TI than ENFJ. You can get a lot of 4-wing-5 INFPs. And I think I know an INFP who's convinced she's a 5. All right. 5s tend to use quite a bit of TI. Right, so let's do the next one. So, right, okay, now we're on FE. So I need a type that's FE inferior. Okay, well, let's just do INTP then. And then a type which is FE Contrarian Alternative. Okay, so that would be ENTJ. Let's do ENTJ. So if I were to ask you out there, who's better at FE, INTP, or ENTJ, most people would say ENTJs. And why is that? Because usually they're more sociable, and they are extroverting, and in their business activities, you've got the CEO role. If we just compare roles, the architect, the designer of systems versus the CEO. So in general, now let's do it the other way around. So inferior for FI versus INTP. So who's better at FI? I would argue INTP is better at FI than ENTJ. Yeah, but it's difficult with that one because it's difficult more to look at behavior. But what I can say is INTP is more likely to stand up on principle than ENTJ. ENTJ is more thinking about pragmatics. So if you sort of look at it like that, pragmatics versus principle. So Fate, are there any more questions out there? I think I've gone through most of the positions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through. I have some other graphics to show. So I've got to change what tool I'm using. Right, so I went through that. So that would be the arrangement for ESFJ. And for those that missed it, that is the rationale from, because I've already gone through the whole type. That's the rationale that it's not as important because it's fourth. So in terms of the cuts in this model, the first, and this is consistent with socionics, that in ESFJ, in model A, the SF functions are your strong functions in ESE. So for example, if you think of the ego row, FE, SI, and then you've got the id row where you've got FI and SE. Yep, because it mirrors it. Yeah. I'm not so sure about Bernie Sanders being INTP. I mean, I have a tendency to think that TI is not good enough. But then again, I was left-leaning until I was about 30. So, there we go. But, I learned about Austrian school economics. Right. So it's possible. But the thing is, Bernie Sanders is well over 30 now. Right. So there's something else I can show. So, yeah, that's with the new numbers. 6, yeah. But it's sort of this. So if people are interested in what the dimensions are in my model, these are the dimensions in that these are the three organizing principles: valued, unvalued, default situational, club, counter club. And again, and I've renumbered this. So slot 6 versus slot 7, they've got one each. And then slot 3 versus slot 2, they've got two each. So it's like, okay, how do you decide which is stronger? Well, the thing is, when it's slot 2 versus slot 3 is slot 2 is more valued than slot 7. Slot 7 is the inferior. Slot 2 is way more valued. So think of how much SE is valued in, say, ISFP compared to INFJ. I think most people would agree that SE is more valued in ISFP than INFJ. And so that is why SE pushes out SI as for the second slot in that model. Whereas when you go into the counter club, it's not that valued, SE, and it's sort of double repressed because it's in that lower right corner. The counter club situational functions, there it's repressed in two ways. It's counter club. So let's have an example type. INFJ. INFJ is NF and the counter club is ST. INFJ is an introverting type, and so what does that then mean is it means that the extroverting ST functions are going to be weakest. So SE and TE. Makes sense. Yeah, and so for example, all the types that are IM, their ES functions are going to be well, all the types which are IN, it means that SE is going to be really weak. And then and if someone's IT, that means that FE is going to be really weak. So if you have INT, then that means FE and SE are going to be really weak. What else have we got? I don't think there's much more. I mean, so I am going to be changing the graphics, but it's going to be a slow process because it's a bit boring. But I did redo the template there with that red text. Did I add a little bit around here? Maybe this gag here about the balanced stable mindset, I added that. So Fate, this is your final opportunity for a question before I mosey on off, if that's the phrase. Right then. So yeah, I hope people don't feel annoyed that I changed it, but I go with, I don't want to be a prisoner to symmetry. And I do think it's fair to say that on the left here, email this. Well, if I remember who you are, Fate, I don't know if I could send it to you if I have you down in my contacts. But here, so for example, I think it's fair to say that ESFJ demonstrates that they value SI more than TI. They, thank you. That they, thank you. Because they value SI so much, it's going to be above SE. Even though SE is the same default verter, extroverter. But in the case of TI versus TE, they only value TI a little bit, but TE it's the same verter as the lead function. So that means that because you've got a preference for extroverting and do a lot of extroverting, sort of empiricalizing and going towards empirical data, then the thinking of the FE-DOM is going to be colored by that preference for extroverting. It's going to be more empirical, even in ENFJ, which has that abstract preference. So there we go. That is my rationale for this sort of asymmetry in terms of where the numbers are concerned, where some people might be like, well, if you're going to do it like that, why don't you do it 1, 2, 3, 4? Well, that's because the auxiliary is more valued than the inferior. Right, and so let's have a look what we have here. I don't know why I'm here. This channel is on my to watch list. I'm an ENTP, so I don't think we're going to see again. Good luck, and I will watch your videos in 5 years or so. Okay, Damien. Right. Yeah. Well, there you go. There's an ENTP that's in touch with their. But actually, what I mean by that is they not self-awareness. Yeah, another thing I can say is that I really am sort of like now pretty much default, we'll call it like slot 8, the binary. So, for example, look at the way ESFJ overplans. One sticks rigidly to a plan and doesn't have much flexibility with NI. So I think when INTJ tries to use FE and it comes across as a bit too much, and so really is something that, so the binary nature of that position, or when sometimes in socionics, if you come across someone who you sort of type as SEE, and the way that they stick to the theory in a way that is very rigid, so it's like all or nothing. Whereas at the opposite extreme, you have the LII that's tinkering with the socionics model, and it's like, oh, well, I don't agree with that. I'm not so sure. I've come up with my own model, Model L, or whatever. This is the opposite extreme, where you've got that difference between slot 8, which is binary, and the first slot, which is the most differentiated, most nuanced function, where it is the most insightful function, the most insightful slot, and all functions can be insightful. You can have FE insights, FI insights, TE insights, TI insights, SE insights, SI insights, NE insights, NI insights. So SE insights can be in the way the situation is read, moment by moment. NI insights, like I recently completed 4 events on NI, and I'm still not that sure what it is. I know what it can do, but I don't really trust the definition of it, because I keep asking for examples from Haley and Jonathan, and they all seem a bit wishy-washy. I want sort of like falsifiable examples. Right then, so I'm going to go now, and I'm going to watch another episode of the best science fiction series ever, Babylon 5. Right then.